Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Bucket of Chum, the Shark Movie Podcast, and this week, Mega Mayhem continues, and this week I am talking about Mega Shark vs. Crocosaurus from 2010, directed by Christopher Ray. Director Christopher Ray has also directed Two-Headed Shark Attack, Three-Headed Shark Attack, Mega Shark vs. Kolossus, which is coming soon, not next week, but the week after, and Shark Week from 2012. In the same year, he also directed Megaconda, which I'm going out on a limb here and saying that it is about a giant-ass anaconda. I'm not going to lie, I looked at the cast list for this movie, and I'm pretty excited. Not that it's going to be great or super amazing, but it should be interesting. But let's get into the poster expectations first. Much like the first movie, it's the shark and the Crocosaurus just fighting, and then the chaos that ensues around them. Considering it's a sequel to last week's movie, I think we can pretty much kind of expect the same kind of CGI, the same caliber of CGI anyways. And, you know, maybe some horny lighting for interrogation rooms, because that was popular as well. Yeah, but those are just some of the things I'm expecting, just based on what we saw last week, and then sort of based on this poster. And now, before we get too much into things, I just wanted to say a little disclaimer that if I ever talk about a movie that, I don't like, just remember, that's just my opinion. If you want to check the movie out, you're more than welcome to. Obviously, some people are going to like movies that I didn't like, and sometimes I even come back around on the movies. Like, if you listen to C6 Cinema, I kind of came back around on Shark Exorcist a little bit compared to how I usually felt about it. So, yeah, I just want to say, we're just here for fun. It's just entertainment. It's not to be taken too seriously. And I'm just trying to have a good time. And that's it. And again, I always have the utmost respect for the filmmakers and the people that actually worked on the movies. Again, I like to poke fun at certain things because that's what I do. But again, no harm intended. It's just, we're just here for a good time. I just wanted to get that out of the way. But yeah, let's get back into the mayhem. Alright, so who's in this? Well, we got fucking Steve Urkel himself, Jaleel White from Family Matters, obviously, and we have Robert Picardo, who played the hologram doctor in Star Trek Voyager, and Sarah Lieving, or Lieving, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, who was the sexy scientist lady in Super Shark from 2011. And I was about to leave it there because I didn't really recognize anybody else, and I scrolled down a little bit more, and there he was. Mr. Bob Vance of Vance Refrigeration, Robert Schaefer. For anybody who's a fan of The Office, yeah, I am. Ooh, wow, 30-year-old white dude is a fan of The Office. Big surprise there. Let's get into the plot synopsis right off of Letterboxd. The tagline, whoever wins, we lose. Nice. When the prehistoric warm water beast, the Crocosaurus, crosses paths with that cold water monster, the Mega Shark, all hell breaks loose in the ocean as the world's top scientists explore every option to halt the aquatic frenzy. Swallowing everything in their paths, including a submarine or two, Croc and Mega lead an explorer and oceanographer on a wild chase. Eventually, the desperate men turn to a volcano for aid. Pretty wild plot synopsis, and probably didn't need to be that detailed, but I think even the plot synopsis on IMDb is a little bit shorter. Maybe not as enticing, I will say that. It has an average rating of 1.7 stars on Letterboxd and a 2.4 on IMDb. So it's kind of more or less exactly what we expected from last week. Again, I'm not expecting this movie to be much different in terms of quality of CGI, acting, even script or whatever, but just more fun and nonsense, which is what we're here for. So it's time for Jaws to meet the claws, and let's dive in. We start off in the Congo, where we see some armed guards standing outside of what looks like to be a mine, and it looks like basically the movie Blood Diamond is happening, so just picture that. And there's even a man trying to steal what he thinks is a diamond. And then fucking Bob Vance, Robert Schaefer, comes in and is like, oh, hey, what did you find there? And he's like, oh, yeah, I was totally going to give it to you. It's for you. And so he gives it to him, and then he tells the guy to shut up. And then he looks at it and starts laughing. And he's like, huh, this isn't diamond, this is shale. And then he throws it. I'm not super familiar with what shale looks like, but I feel like it's not something you would confuse with diamond, but again, I am not a fucking geologist, so I could be totally wrong. Let's look it up. Let's do our new segment. Steve, look shit up. What does shale look like? Okay, unless I didn't hear him right, there's no... Oh my god. I know there's a bunch of you out there that know what shale looks like. And you're like, yeah, there's no fucking way it's going to be confused with a diamond. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, it would have made sense if, like, the guy was just trying to pretend it didn't look like a diamond and he was, like, going to keep it for himself. But, like, he didn't keep it. He threw it away, like, and he wouldn't have been able to just find it easily. So, I don't know. I'm going to move on. I'm taking this too seriously again. And then there's an earthquake or something as the ground starts shaking, and then we hear a growl come from within the mine, and so everybody starts leaving, and then, like, Bob Vance is there, like, yelling at everybody to come back, and then behind him, the giant croc comes and eats him. We don't really see that, though. We just kind of hear the screams, but then we just cut to people running, but when we cut back, we do see this croc, like, come out of the cave and, like, just fully step on somebody. So, I mean, that was pretty cool. I mean, it's a little bit more carnage than we even got in last week's movie, so I kind of appreciated that, at least. That was something. And then we go to a naval ship, and the commander yells for McCormick, who is played by Steve Urkel, Jaleel White. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to refer to his character as Urkel for most of this movie, because I kind of forgot it here and there, and I grew up watching so much Family Matters, I cannot see anything else other than Urkel. So I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But anyways, Urkel is in this lab, and he has, like, a shark in a tank behind some glass or something. Why you're doing this on a Navy ship, I have no idea. But anyways, this Navy seawoman, lady seaman, comes in and starts telling him, like, oh yeah, you need to go see the captain, he's looking for you. And then he starts explaining his experiment, and I guess he's using sound to deter the shark, which we have seen in countless movies before, even, like, movies that, like, predate this one. So, like, yeah, we already know this kind of shit. So, I don't know. Unless in this universe it doesn't, I don't know. Again, I'm looking way too much into it. But of course, like, this glass and CG shark, like, the shark is completely black. So I guess it's supposed to be in darkness, or they couldn't afford to have the shark fully CG here. It's a little unclear. And then the shark bumps into the glass, cracking it. And then the female, what was her name? Corinne, his fiance, is like, okay, well, it's time for me to leave. Make sure you go see the Admiral. And then they start getting all lovey-dovey and be like, ooh, let's make plans for later. Oh, sexy times. So, yeah, they're going to be fucking. Nice. And McCormick goes to the bridge and sees the captain and explains some screens that they're looking at. There is a lot of times in this movie that they're looking at screens and they're trying to talk about stuff, and I'm like, I don't know how to explain what they're doing right now, because they're not explaining to us. They're like, oh, yeah, look at this. What are we looking at? You're like, oh, satellite and heat and radar, but it's like nothing makes sense. I don't know what anything is, and I don't think they planned it out that way. It's like a kid kind of wrote it. But I mean, I guess it's just, if you turn your brain off, it's really easy to follow, I guess. But I'm just saying, like, it's not important to pay super close attention to this, because it's just all nonsense. So yeah, just take that for what it is. And so basically, McCormick believes that the shark from the first movie is still alive, and then he's arguing with the captain about it, and McCormick's like, well, nobody actually saw the corpse or anything. I was like, I mean, fuck, man, that's what I said. We just saw them sinking. We didn't get any, like, real confirmation, but it's weird that the octopus didn't come back. They're just like, nah, we don't want it for the sequel. Maybe they lost the Photoshop files or something, I don't know. And so McCormick leaves the bridge, and he's mad, and he runs into Corinne, and he's like, yeah, the shark's still out there, I gotta go do all this stuff. And she's like, no, just be calm, listen. No sirens or anything, so everything's fine. Oh, yeah, because the Navy did such an amazing job the first time around that, oh, yeah, I'm definitely gonna take their word for it. But anyways, then this epic music starts playing, and it's just Urkel going around the ship, gathering pieces of technology and different items, getting ready to do his own experiment, I guess. But, like, for what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, two very different things are happening. It's not that exciting. It, like, should be a little bit more sneaky, I guess. But anyways, he starts lowering this device into the water, and then he looks at his watch and he's like, oh, Corinne. He realizes he's late. And then as soon as he starts heading back, this shark jumps over the ship, like just comes out of fucking nowhere. So he basically gathered all these items for nothing. And he runs and he finds Corinne passed out and bleeding, and so he covers her wound, but she's dead. And so then he's dragged away by another seaman. I'm going to say that a lot. So yeah, the seaman drags Urkel away, and we can see just an enormous shark fin circling the ship, and then it jumps over the ship every once in a while again. It's basically just the same repeating CGI shot, and it like hits the ship with its tail when it jumps over. I guess just to extend this scene out, because I mean, I'm pretty sure this thing could take it out with one bite. But anyways, we see Urkel getting into dive gear, and he leaves the ship as it starts to sink. I'm not sure if anyone else got off this boat. It doesn't feel like it. It's so because he had dive gear, he's the only one that managed to escape. Again, don't question it. Don't think about it. We're back in Congo, and shitty Indiana Jones is hacking some brush away, and he's being chased by something, and it ends up being a wild boar, or I guess it was somebody's pet, we find out. It's the bartender's pet, and he tranked it, and he's like, oh, yeah, it's going to be out for 3 days. And then the bartender's like, yeah, you got to explain that to my wife, and make sure you actually feel bad about it this time. I don't know if this thing was actually going to kill the man, or if he was just, like, kind of being a dick. I'm not entirely sure. It's not very clear. And so him and the bartender have a shot, and they're just kind of shooting the shit. And then we see basically what looks like Uma Thurman in Batman and Robin before she becomes Poison Ivy kind of walk into this bar. Like, just blonde hair, straggled, glasses crooked and shit. And she's also kind of dressed like Bryce Dallas Howard in Jurassic World, where she's in high heels in basically a jungle environment. Like, yeah, we all know it's dumb. I don't need to go into it. We all know it's stupid. So she comes and sits beside him and says, like, oh, yeah, I need your help, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, let me guess, you work for, like, some coal mine or blah, 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 some illegal operation that's just, like, tearing these lands apart, and then you dug up some ancient creature that you need me to kill. Like, very specific, but yes, that's what is happening right now. Then she offers him triple his rate to capture the creature that's killed 34 of their men. So Nigel, the shitty Indiana Jones, gets up and asks her to show him the way. And then next, they're in a helicopter, and she asks how long he's been, like, hunting creatures and ghouls and ghosts and goblins or whatever, and how many he's, like, actually seen or caught, and I guess it's 0. And then he basically tells her, like, let's just keep this to business talk or whatever. And I guess we kind of find out later on why he's not wanting to talk about it, because it sounds like he lies to, like, villagers and whatnot. So he goes in and tells a story like, oh, yeah, there's this creature that's killing things, and you have to pay me to go and take care of it. So he's kind of like a scam artist, or like a swindler, I guess. But yeah, he doesn't want to talk about it with her. And so he says, let's just focus on, like, this monster in particular. And oddly enough, he's not talking about his penis. They reach their destination and start heading into the woods. And again, as I said, Office Lady is still in high heels. And she's wearing a black dress, too. Like, I don't know much about the Congo. I imagine it has to be pretty fucking warm, and maybe a black dress is, like, not the thing to be wearing. Not to mention the bugs and shit. You probably shouldn't be doing this. I'm just saying. And she basically tells Nigel that she needs to be in a meeting in 2 hours, so she's just gonna write him a check, and they can both say, like, oh, it was just this other thing. And then he starts, like, breathing on her, like, really closely, being like, no, there is something here. You think it's whatever other creature they thought it was. He's like, no, there's something here. You're standing in its footprint. And then the camera is over top of her, zooms out, and she's standing in a big CGI footprint from the Croc. Like, boys, could we not have gotten the shovels out and just dug ourselves a little hole? It doesn't have to be consistent with the size of the creature. The size of the creature isn't consistent in any of these movies. So they were on like a dirt road. It would have been super easy. They could have filled it back in. It would have been fine. I'm just saying. Mayhem! As they walk along, she walks into the water, trying to back away from a crocodile, and then it turns out that high heel lady is actually standing on Crocosaurus. Amazingly enough, I don't think anybody in this movie actually refers to this creature as Crocosaurus. It's literally just in the title, and then the rest of the time they just call it a croc. They don't refer to it as anything else, which is amazing to me. Somebody should have coined the term Crocosaurus in the movie. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm a little disappointed at that. But anyways, it flips her into its mouth, and then it goes after Nigel, who hides in a cave and then like manages to escape around the creature, and then he lets the creature eat him, and then it spits him out and then passes out. So I thought it was dead, but we find out that basically he just tranked this creature. And so we go to a warehouse that he's calling, but we don't hear his end of the conversation. We just hear these two guys, Gene and whoever his minion is. Doesn't matter. He's going to die soon anyways. And basically, Nigel wants to rent a boat from Gene to transport this giant croc, I guess. And so they try to argue about like percentages, whatever. They agree, and they go and pick up this giant croc. The giant croc actually shows up outside their warehouse on the back of a truck. Not covered up or anything, like just on the back of a flatbed truck. As if nobody's going to notice that and like say something. Insane. Mayhem! Then we go to an interrogation room, and let me tell you, no sexy lighting. It was kind of lit like an actual, or what you would picture a somewhat scary interrogation room to look like. They took notes from the first movie and they improved upon it. I'm blown away by the non-sexy lighting. Although now that it's not here, I kind of miss it. No, but it looked better. It looked like a more scary interrogation room. So Urkel is in there sitting across from a guy in the suit and starts asking him questions or whatever. And then sexy scientist lady comes strolling in, and she hands the papers to like this FBI agent or whoever he is and says like, go read it outside. Basically giving her power to interrogate him or take him away, whatever. And then she says that she's Agent Hutchinson with the NOAA. And I'm like, fucking what? So the NOAA is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. And she says she represents or works with a bunch of military leaders. So I guess in this universe, they have a branch that deals with this thing, which doesn't make sense to me because later on she gives different credentials. Like she says she's with the Secret Service. And I'm just like, if you're going to lie to people about your secret administration, keep it consistent. Like, has anybody seen Supergirl, the TV show? Her sister says that she's with the FBI, even though she's with like this secret non-government organization or whatever. But she keeps the lie consistent. That's all I'm saying. Keep your lies consistent, people. In your movies. Don't lie in real life. That's bad. Bad. So she talks to him. He doesn't really say much, and she's about to leave. And he says, like, no, I can help you find the shark. And she says, oh, great. It comes with no pay, and you leave with me right now. And I'm like, I'm a little uncomfortable with this white woman telling this black dude that she's not going to pay him for his work. He's kind of like works for the government, so she didn't even really need to say that, I feel like. Could have just like kind of ordered him to do it or said like, hey, do you want to help us kill this thing or not? And just leave it at that. I find that a little bit weird. That's a little bit strange to me.
Well, that was awkward.
Yes, it was.
And then next, we're on the ship in the Atlantic, south of Florida, apparently, where these two warehouse dudes, Gene and his minion, are talking about the croc, and then this is where we find out that it's not actually dead, it's just been tranquilized. And yeah, these people are all going to die because they're stupid, because just kill it, like, just get rid of it. Why are we doing this? Like, anyways, like, the minion dude is like, oh man, I need a new job, and well, it's not going to be a problem soon anyways. And then Gene and Nigel talk about the croc, and says the Croc was just protecting its eggs. So there's more out there, and later on we will find out that there are many more out there. And then the ship shakes, and we can see the giant fin starting to circle the boat. Gene starts freaking out and says, like, we need to cut the ropes loose, and so he starts cutting the ropes loose for the Croc, even though Nigel's telling him not to do that. I guess in the end it was a good idea. I don't really know, because the ship ends up sinking. Nigel and Gene, like, just voluntarily jump overboard. The minion dies. And I guess so did the rest of the crew because nobody jumped overboard. Kind of feel like at least one or two other people might have survived, but I guess not. Again, I don't know anything about boats. I'm stupid. We go to another ship, and Robert Picardo from Voyager comes in, and he's playing Admiral Calvin. And then Hutchinson and Urkel arrive on the bridge, and Admiral explains, like, what this ship is, and it's dedicated to hunt and find the Megalodon. And he wants to see, like, Urkel's shark repellent technology and what it does and all of that. So the Admiral sends out McCormick to talk to the survivors of the cargo ship. So that's Gene and Nigel. And so we see Gene and Nigel just chilling on a beach, or I guess they're passed out from washing up on shore. And then they're, like, woken up by children walking on the beach with an old man, and they're, like, kind of harassing them. And I'm pretty sure Nigel pulls a gun on one of the kids, as one does. But, like, jokingly around, it says, like, all right, get out of here, you rascal. I'm like, you're not even American. I'm pretty sure he has, like, this South African accent, which, okay, well, I don't know. Pretty fucking wild, though. Gene starts walking away, saying, like, I quit, I'm done. And then Nigel ends up in a bar, and the bartender starts asking him for money in some other language, but he doesn't have anything. So he tries to, like, bargain with his watch, but it's broken. And then Hutchison comes in and offers to pay, and then he looks at her, he says, well, I bet this bottle of whiskey's gonna cost me something. And so they leave the bar, they end up on a beach at a picnic table, and he's basically telling her about the creature, but they think they're talking about different things, or they think they're talking about the same thing, but they're talking about different things. So she's talking about the shark. So she thinks that the shark sunk the cargo ship, and he's talking about a crocodile. So she's like, wait, what are you talking about? We're talking about a shark. And he's like, no, I know the difference between a shark and a crocodile, which I now realize is stupid when he says this, because it's the shark that took the ship down. It wasn't the Croc that took the ship down. So they're... Oh my god. I think this was, like, second draft. I don't think anybody did a whole lot of, like, rereading or rewrites, because this doesn't make any sense. Good god. But this is also where she introduces herself as in the Secret Service. Like, who are you with? Make up your mind here. And so Nigel says that she'll never kill it because of its skin, and that's, like, kind of what tips them off that they're talking about different things. And she basically says, like, I'm taking you with me to this ship thing where we're hunting this shark, and you don't have a fucking choice. Okay, cool. But I was also like, how are the people tracking this shark not realizing that these attacks are happening in different places at different times, like, farther away from them? Like, you should have figured this out. But immediately following this scene, they're like, the Admiral's looking over the map of where the attacks are happening, and he's like, oh no, something else is going on here. And I'm like, thank God somebody has some sort of sense to realize this early on. So, like, the Navy, at least Robert Picardo's character, Calvin, is a little bit more competent in this movie. Thank God. Just a little bit of competency is just nice to see every once in a while. And after that, we cut to some fishermen fishing off some rocks near a beach, and then he gets scared because the giant croc comes up and just eats him up. So again, it's just one of those scenes where it's like, hey, it's in a different place now, so we need to show that. A very quick scene again. We don't really see much. The CG is whatever. I will say that I kind of like the Croc CGI better than the octopus CGI. Even the shark looks a little bit better in this movie, I'll say that. It's, like, not a huge improvement, but it is slightly better, considering it came out, like, just a year later, although I kind of assume they probably just shot these back-to-back, I would imagine. We go back to the shark hunting ship, and Hutchinson brings Nigel to the bridge in cuffs or hands tied. I'm pretty sure he was in handcuffs. And then he and Urkel, I guess, have met before. I don't feel like they ever fully explain how they necessarily know each other, or I guess they do have a conversation later on, but it doesn't really matter that much. But like Nigel starts egging Urkel on about his girlfriend. It's like, oh, did your fiance like finally realize that you're not that great of a man? Blah blah blah. And Hutchinson's like, yeah, you should probably shut up. And finally gets him to like stop talking. And I don't think they've told him yet that the fiance is dead. So he is really being a big fucking dick right now. So yeah, he starts listening to the Admiral talk, and they turn their attention to this other seaman. Oh, but before they do that, Nigel says to Urkel, oh yeah, his fiance is the finest piece of ass to ever walk the jungles of Africa. And I'm just like, dude, that is such a... I don't know. I felt weird hearing that. I'm like, this makes me uncomfortable. It's really dumb, but like, you could have found another way to make this guy creepy sounding without sort of sounding like a fucking racist too. But I don't know. That's just me. Again, second draft script, I assume. So anyways, as they're paying attention to the seaman, again, they're looking at fucking screens, and I guess somehow they've spotted eggs. And so Urkel is arguing that, like, well, some species of sharks lay eggs, which is true, but the Croc dude, Nigel, is like, oh, yeah, but look at this. And so he pulls out a piece of the Croc shell from his back pocket, which he just had. And then the Admiral, like, gets it and gives it to somebody to get analyzed or some shit. And so basically they just argue back and forth. And they end up deciding, like, well, you need to go see if these are Croc eggs or shark eggs. We need to get, like, visual confirmation of this. So not just depending on the fucking screens and the satellites, actually looking with our eyes. And what gets me is that, like, these satellites and screens, whatever they do or whatever they're for, found random eggs in random places on the planet, but they can't find this ginormous shark. Like, this thing is huge. They should be able to... I don't know. It's whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm putting too much into this again. Oh, God. So on the way to the eggs, Urkel and Nigel argue about their professions and how, again, Nigel just robbed, like, the tribes of wherever he was. And Hutchison is piloting the chopper and tells them to shut up. They're making this more complicated than it needs to be. And I was just wondering, like, if she broke character here and she was, like, just kind of fucking done with this. Like, this is too complicated, shut the fuck up. Or if that was just her character. I would not be surprised by either one. Nigel says that they need to check the shorelines because that's where crocs like to lay their eggs. And then they try to speculate how long it's going to take for these eggs to hatch. And so he says it takes a normal croc egg to hatch after 5 months. And they're like, oh, but with these things, we have no idea. But I'm like, if these things are bigger, should that not take longer? Again, not a scientist, but I feel like you would have more time than they're indicating here, because this takes place over a very short period of time from what I can tell. But that's not even the dumbest part of this. Hutchison asks, how will they know if the eggs have hatched?
What?
Okay, I don't know about you guys, and I don't know about your, like, basic grade 5 science classes. I know for us, we literally went to a farm where they talked about eggs and chickens. How will you know when this giant egg hatches? How are you going to know? How... Well, let me explain, since there seem to be some dumb people. When the egg has hatched, a living fucking being is going to come out of that egg, and it'll be slightly broken, and you'll be like, well, it's hatched. And Nigel even says, like, yeah, when you see, like, 25 to 30 foot, like, baby crocodiles running around, then you'll know they've hatched. Oh my god. They land this chopper somewhere, and they head out on the rocks by the water, so I'm pretty sure it's where we saw this, like, lone fisherman getting eaten earlier. And then Urkel puts his sonar sound device in the water, and then Nigel and Hutchison wander off, and they find a cave. And so they start heading in, but they don't see any eggs in there. And then Nigel speculates that maybe she laid her eggs in the water on purpose. So I guess somewhere else her eggs were found in water. I don't remember seeing this part again, but there's just always so much happening. I'm going to get into that later on, but I don't know what he was talking about, but they're like, yeah, she probably laid the eggs in water on purpose. Okay, cool. So they leave the cave, and then Hutchison hands Nigel these binoculars she has that read heat signatures, I guess. They don't look like any heat signature binoculars I've ever seen, but whatever. They look into the water and they can see like the heat signatures from the Crocosaurus eggs. Again, nobody calls it a Crocosaurus. What? Bothers me. The Crocosaurus eggs are there, and there's like a shit ton of them. And then Urkel tells Nigel that when he had his device in the water, he could hear chirping noises, which means that the eggs are going to hatch soon. And then Nigel says, like, oh, yeah, crocs chirp. And I'm assuming baby crocs make chirping noises, maybe when they're tiny. I'm just going to go with that. I'm not looking that up. There's just so many other more important things. Hutchison then tells Nigel and Urkel they need to leave right after they spot the shark fin out in the water, and then she says that they're going to launch a missile attack. And then Nigel protests, saying that they're his eggs. Like, not likely, douche. But they all get in the helicopter as he just continues to be mad, and then the chopper takes off as the shark tries to grab it, and then the Croc busts out of the side of these rocks like it's the fucking Kool-Aid Man.
Oh yeah!
A squadron, like a bunch of planes, start shooting missiles, and they miss the Croc, but they manage to hit some of the eggs. So they inform the Admiral and like tells them like the National Guard is taking the lead on evacuating people because it looks like these things are heading for Miami, I guess. And so the chopper follows the Croc and it goes to Miami, and then like a couple of ships are also following the shark while this is happening. And then we go to a sub that shoots a torpedo at the shark. The shark grabs it, breaches the water, and now it's up in the air, and then it lets go of it, and then it and the torpedo just kind of fall back into the water. I don't know. Like, I thought maybe, like, he was going to, like, spin the torpedo around and shoot at the submarine, but, like, that didn't even happen. I don't know. That was weird. They're just like, hey, look at this. I mean, it was kind of cool. It grabbed a torpedo in its mouth, so, I mean, you know, that was cool. It's nonsense, but it was cool. The chopper watches the Croc, I don't know if this was the main Crocosaurus, or if the eggs had started hatching at this point. Again, there's always so much happening, it's hard to keep clear of what is happening when. The chopper watches the Croc invade Miami as it topples a stadium and then whips like news helicopters out of the air. And then Urkel comes up with a plan to create an arc flash from a nuclear reactor. Honestly, guys, I was too high to understand the science of this or what exactly the plan is. Basically, they're using this nuclear station to create a electrical thing to make the Croc go away, like an electrical shock or shield to make the Croc go bye-bye. That's my basic understanding of it, but I'm a basic bitch. One of the Navy officers just phones the nuclear facility and says, we need to create an arc flash now. And then the dude's like, I don't know if I can do that. And he's like, I'm with the Navy, you need to. And then he's like, okay, I guess we'll do it. And so he just runs and then starts creating this arc flash. Nobody asks for credentials or anything, or confirmation, authorization, nothing. It's just like, I'm in the Navy. Oh, shit. And like, wild. Absolutely wild. And then we go to SeaWorld for a second, and the Croc comes in and eats Free Willy and the rest of his family, and like scares the shit out of some school children, probably scarring them for life. And then they make this arc flash as the military comes in with tanks and start shooting at it. And they do another arc flash, which I guess sends it back. And I think some of these shots on the beach, I do think I remember reading for Super Shark in some of the trivia that they reused some of this footage for that movie. I didn't really spot any of it super clear, but they may have used some quick shots here and there. I wouldn't be surprised either way. And then they're all back on the ship again, and Nigel is still on about the eggs. But then he says, like, if they dissect one, then they might be able to find out what exactly is going to kill this thing. And then the Admiral says, like, well, we have eggs and they're on, like, various vessels or whatever. So when he's naming these ships, I assumed they would be, like, ships, not fucking submarines, which is where they decided to store a couple of these eggs. So we go to a submarine with this, like, giant-ass 10-foot croc egg inside of it, and then the scientist starts yelling for help because she can hear the egg starting to hatch, and at that moment, the fucking submarine is then attacked by the shark. Like, why would you put shark egg, croc egg, any eggs, any monster eggs on a fucking submarine of all places? That just seems highly irresponsible and like a disaster absolutely waiting to happen. Insane. Bring it to a facility anywhere else. Back on the ship, Urkel says the eggs are attracting the shark, so it's a good thing they don't have one on the boat. Like, we all knew this already, right? Like, we kind of already figured out that the shark was attracted to the eggs because it attacked them on the beach, and then the croc came out. Like, but they are just figuring this out now. Like, I already figured this out a while ago, and they're like, oh my god. Ugh. Scientist my ass. Nigel then comes up with a plan to lure the croc and, I guess, the shark into the Panama Canal, and Hutchison says, and then annihilate them into tiny pieces. Like, oh, Jesus, okay. And then Urkel objects because there's like 1 million people living on the banks of the canal, and they don't have any eggs left. And then the Admiral says, then you better bring your hydrosonic balls.
Funny, right?
That's his line, word for word. Oh, fuck. If I had a penny. Anyways, they all settle on this plan, and the three amigos get into a chopper as Urkel whines about not having the right calculations or whatever to even begin reconfiguring these balls. This is just a story about a seaman and his balls. Nigel hands Hutchison a piece of paper and tells her to have a team meet him at these coordinates, and they'll be able to find more eggs. And also for the semen balls, could they not have just used those to like help corral the shark? Like, instead of trying to use it to specifically lure it, like, get it on the opposite side of where the shark's heading and then make it head in the opposite direction. Like, why do we have to reconfigure it to lure the shark?
I give it to you. You got me there.
Just saying. And you can like chum the shit out of the canal, give it something to go after. In the Navy. This submarine starts heading down a narrow canal. I guess they got some orders to go and hunt for the fish eggs. So it starts banging against the seawalls, and they start taking on water, but they still continue on. And then they finally come across the eggs and bring a couple on board. But earlier, we heard Nigel say, oh, have them meet me here where we can get more eggs. But, like, he never goes there because why would he, number one? Again, like, we need to maybe fix some of the lines, hire a script supervisor, I don't know. We go to the Panama Canal, and then the three of them are standing there, and they finally see a helicopter come and lower one of these eggs into the canal. Hutchison tells Urkel to stop working on his device because, like, oh, well, we have the eggs now, so we don't need this anymore, blah, blah, blah. And, like, she's just getting, like, louder and louder as she's talking. Like, she's had enough of this. I don't know if she, like, her character has had enough of this situation, or, again, the actor was like, I've had enough of this movie. Unclear. Either one's completely possible. No, I'm assuming it's her character's just, like, done with this shit. She's like, I don't want to capture them. I don't want to study them. I want to murder them, kill them, don't care, go home. Which, like, girl, same. Like, same. Because they haven't fought yet. This, again, where's the fighting? We then see the shark swim under a fleet of ship as the ship fires into the water, like all the ships firing into the water. And then the three amigos get into the chopper and fly away, but we hear on the radio that the eggs aren't working. But then like 3 seconds later, we hear that they are. So again, whatever. The jet fighters come in and start like bombing the shit out of the canal, and the shark and Croc finally start fighting. But of course, it's the CGI mess, cloudy water, much like the first one. But we knew this going in, so it's to be expected. But then the shark is like thrown on land and then like kind of skids through the city a little bit and then like starts fighting the Croc and they're out of water and whatnot. It's just a big jumbled mess, but I mean, I guess it's not really that different from like a Transformers movie, really.
Oh, snap.
On the chopper, Urkel asks like why the weapons aren't working. Like we didn't learn anything from the first movie, which like very clearly happened in this world, in this universe. No? Fine. So the shark and Croc fight some more as the chopper flies above. When they report back to the Admiral, they realize the Croc has been laying eggs at like all the places it's been attacking. So they need to go back and destroy like hundreds, maybe even thousands of Croc eggs. On the satellite, they can see the eggs are starting to hatch. This satellite is amazing for certain things, other things completely fucking useless. I don't know the capabilities of their technology at all. None whatsoever. And then the baby Crocs start attacking the Santa Monica Pier. They hear the shark is headed for Hawaii near an active volcano because there's probably more eggs there. Not really clear why it's going back there specifically, other than the plot needs a volcano for reasons. So here we are. Aloha! One of the subs is chasing the shark, and it's firing, according to Urkel, his line says they're firing nuclear weapons at it, and they need to stop because if they hit a volcanic feature, then all of Hawaii is gone. If they're using nuclear weapons in the first place, which I don't think they were, I think it was a nuclear-powered sub shooting torpedoes at it. I don't think the torpedoes were nuclear. Or maybe whoever wrote this didn't understand that. Like, I don't think... Or, like, the nuclear sub could have a nuke on it, but I don't think it was shooting nuclear weapons. Like, I think it's just shooting regular fucking torpedoes at it. But regardless, this shark swallows the sub. And Nigel says, like, oh, it's gone nuclear. It just... I don't know if it swallowed it whole or, like, what the deal is, but... Yeah, I guess apparently now this shark is nuclear. But, oh, it is no atomic shark. No, sir.
Atomic shark in the house, y'all!
Our three amigos head to Hawaii, where there's reports of the eggs hatching, and the smaller crocs are swimming around the islands, and they think something is leading all the crocs there from all over the world, I guess. Spoiler alert, it's just the mother shark calling them. So again, we don't even have a real concrete reason for this, other than Mommy's like, help me! Like, that's it. That's the only reason we get. The big Croc is walking through some city as jets try to shoot at it. Or maybe it's one of the smaller ones. I don't know. The three amigos' helicopter crashes after a Croc jumps at it. Hutchison is injured, but she tells, like, Urkel and Nigel to just go on. And then Urkel kind of has, like, this traumatic moment where he's like, I'm not leaving my fiance. And so he's, like, kind of having a flashback moment there. And then Nigel's like, listen, it's, like, you and me, man. Like, we got to kill this thing. Like, are you with me? And so, like, he's like, yeah. So then they start, like, heading down towards the beach. And they're almost attacked. And again, this is where they say, like, oh, it's coming because, like, the mother's yelling for them. That's why all the Crocs are headed here. We're not going to dwell on that anymore. Who cares? The jets start firing at the Crocs and the shark, and then Nigel and Urkel run slow-mo down the beach, and a Croc attacks Nigel, but I guess he just shoots it in the mouth with his guns and kills it, I guess. It was pretty easy for him. And again, he has all these, like, tranquilizers and stuff that seem to be pretty effective. Why we're not utilizing a bit more of this, I don't really understand. Trank it, kill it later. They continue running down the beach as, like, big explosions and booms and as the Crocs are being fired upon. And when they get to the beach, Urkel makes a good point and says the jets need to stop firing at the shark because it swallowed a nuclear submarine. So Maybe don't do that. And I'm like, yeah, that's valid. That's actually a good point. Urkel and Nigel head towards this small boat, this small dinghy, and he says he's going to make his balls work and lure that shark to a volcano and kill them both. He didn't say balls. I'm going to continue to say balls. Nigel has his doubts, and Urkel says he's got to try. And so I guess they kind of agree, okay, whatever, let's try this. So they go out and drop the ball, and it starts making noises, I guess, and it seems to be attracting the creatures towards them, so I guess he figured out how to get it to work. I guess the ball is also supposed to set off the volcano. I don't know if it's supposed to be with sound waves or if he fixed it with an explosive. It's not really made super clear to me here. I don't know. I have no idea. Nigel gets anxious and drives the boat off as the ball sinks, and Urkel gets ready to set off the device to explode or whatever it is supposed to do. And they make it back to the beach, and we get a glimpse of the creatures fighting, and then an explosion going off, and then lava coming in and covering everything in its path, all of the baby crocs and everything. And then we just see these two creatures intertwined, biting each other's tails basically, falling into this volcano. But it looks like they're covered in a rock or something, some sort of volcanic rock. So I can probably assume how it's going to come back in the next movie. It was protected by this volcanic rock and it preserved it. Anyways, the Admiral smokes a cigar in celebration, and Hutchison is better, and she ends up picking up Nigel and Urkel off the beach in a helicopter, and then they say, let's go home. And then as they are, one of them says, what a croc. They almost made it the whole movie without doing that line, and then they just fucking squeeze it right in at the end. But that's it. That was Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus. Listen, this was fun. I feel like everything in this movie was slightly improved from its predecessor. The CGI was mostly the same for the creatures and whatnot, but the stuff the jets and whatnot looked a little bit better. So there's definitely some improvements that we're seeing here. I will say one thing with some of these early Asylum movies is that they're always moving. There is always something happening on screen. I had to rewind a couple of times because I was looking away taking notes, and then I looked back and I'm like, what the fuck is happening? So it goes on. It doesn't go on too long. There's just so much happening. And speaking of, I was letting the credits roll as I was writing this bit out, and a fucking end credit scene pops up. And so Nigel is on a beach with Jean, and he says he got a call from Japan about a giant lizard. Oh, like Godzilla. Oh, I bet we never see him in this franchise again. Or a Godzilla franchise, for that matter. But, yeah, that's how they end the movie. They imply that this dude is going to go fight Godzilla, more or less. But anyways, the acting is fine. Robert Ricardo put his all in this. He did a good job. And, I mean, overall, I like the acting from everybody just a little bit better. The biggest issue I have sometimes with these movies, again, mostly with the Asylum's earlier movies, they seem to have moved away from this a little bit, is just all the crazy nonsensical scenes. It's they feel like they always have to have a big crazy explosion happening on screen or something crazy. And I'm like, dude, even Michael Bay takes a breather every once in a while. So you know what I'm saying? Just, ease it back a little bit, because sometimes there's just too much. It's too much for me. I mean, then again, this isn't really a movie you really need to pay attention to. It's just mindless, numb action shark movie nonsense, which, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. So I think I'm still going to give this a 2 stars, because I think it has some rewatchability. I think it has more rewatchability than the first one, in my opinion. I actually kind of enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. So I'm actually kind of excited for the next one to see where that takes us. I believe that is Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark. So tune in for that next week, where we'll dive into that one. But that's it for this week. Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus from 2010. You guys know you can find me on all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Slasher, all at Bucket of Chum Podcast. And if you want to support the podcast, go to patreon.com/bucketofchum. Just for $2 or $3 a month Canadian, You get access to all of the past episodes I've done exclusively for Patreon, and access to all future episodes as long as you're a member. There's also a monthly newsletter. You get early access to weekly episodes, including the video, and yeah, all kinds of stuff like that going on. So if you really want to support the podcast, that's a great way to do it. If not, if you can leave a 5-star review or rating or something like that, putting that kind of stuff out there really helps the podcast grow, and I really appreciate it. But anyways, I'll see you guys next time for more Mega Mayhem nonsense. Unbucket a chum.